A good investor is going to make sure they're putting aside money every month. So it's like when you get paid rent, it's not just like you get paid rent and it goes to your pocket. First, if you have a mortgage, you're definitely paying the mortgage first. PITI, payment, insurance, taxes, you know what I'm saying? So you got to pay for all that. You do put aside for CapEx, which is capital expenditures, which means like anything that goes wrong to the property. But then there's also like other small reserves you're putting to the side too. This is to help keep you safe and protected for if there are unexpected expenses.
Part 1 of 2-part series, short-term rental versus long-term rental, turnover, and wear and tear. Welcome to Uncommon State of Mind, where we debate different ways to leverage your next investment to create time freedom, legacy impact, and generational wealth. My name is Joey Garba, a.k.a. Mr. J. Mays.
What's good? And I'm Ademla Dowdu, also known as @A.D, the Fly Realtor.
Awesome. So what we're doing right now, we're actually getting ready to hop right into the debate, man. What we do before we hop into it is we pour some drinks, because sometimes these debates can get a little heated.
And we need to remind ourselves that we're still friends.
Yeah, we get.
So it's like, when you guys are chilling, don't go crazy, all right?
So we got to take a sip from time to time. The first thing that we're going to go ahead and debate is, here's the question actually. Are short-term rentals a better investment than traditional rentals?
Easy, no. Next question.
The first topic that we're going to go ahead and hop into in regards to that is turnover. Okay, so I'll go ahead and hop right into the turnover conversation. I believe that short-term rentals are superior to long-term rentals for a couple of reasons, especially in regards to turnover, because we can control the guests that stay in our apartment. When it comes to long-term rent, after you guys do your background checks, after you guys go ahead and vet your tenants, however, in which we can also do, you then let them stay. If they mess it up or if they act crazy, it's not like you can do anything about that. One thing that we can do is, if a guest is acting crazy, we can ask them to go ahead and leave immediately. Next thing is, and on top of that, and why I say that is because, say you do have a bad guest in there. Not only they're messing up the property, all of a sudden they decide to stop paying rent, right? They stop paying rent, and now you have to go through the entire eviction process in order to get them out of your property. That eviction process normally, and we live in California, normally that'll take, if you're good, maybe 2, maybe 3 months. We just got out of a moratorium, meaning people can squat in your property for longer than what they could have back in the day. I actually have a friend who's a realtor. She came to me. She's like, man, people do not want to rent out here in Cali, or at least not right now. I have a couple of, she says she had multiple landlords come up to her and be like, okay, we've had people squatting in our apartment for 6 months and not paying rent. You're over here, during those 6 months, you're accumulating expenses. You know what I'm saying? Right. We're talking about unpaid rent. We're talking about property taxes, any wear and tear due to the property. We don't have to deal with any of that. So we control the tenants that come in. Well, not tenants, actually. As a short-term rental host, they're not even tenants. We control the guests that come in. And if they're doing something crazy, we can go ahead and ask them to leave. In regards to those tenant rights, short-term rental hosts don't have to worry about that because guests do not have tenant rights. If you guys are looking into getting into short-term rentals, here's a quick tip. Do not ever let any guests send mail to your location with their name on it, because then they establish tenant rights and then you have to go through the eviction process. Don't ever let them do that. So if they ever ask, be like, no. But since they don't have any established tenant rights.
Wait, real quick. I want you guys to really understand the level of pro tip that would, because it also applies to long-term rentals, just in a different way. More so if you're like in an owner-occupied property and you want to like let somebody else come stay with you for a certain amount of time, but they may not be living there. The same thing applies. If they were to start receiving mail there, according to the law, they are now living there. So it's a whole nother problem. So just want to make sure you guys knew how much of a pro tip that really would. All right, go ahead.
And I appreciate that because, look, even though that we're debating, he's still going to give me some kudos.
I mean, respect to where respect is due. It doesn't mean you're not wrong. I mean, that part right there, you were right about that.
Okay, for sure. So, I mean, that pretty much closes up my argument is pretty much we can maintain the quality of the guests that stay in our location. And two, since our guests don't have any tenant rights, we can ask them to leave at any time if they're mistreating the property.
All right. I mean, that's cool. And I really do understand that. And trust me, like, I do understand the importance of having a good tenant in your units on a regular basis. But here's the thing to me, like, you're going to have to keep on getting good tenants. You know what I mean? So it's like, let's say, like, what's your best performing short-term rental? Like, how often are you switching? How often are you turning over to bring someone else?
Well, I mean, it depends on the length of stay. Like, you can control length of stay. I mean, depending on how you run your business, you can have a minimum length of stay be a single day, or a minimum length of stay be, a couple of days. Or you can even, there's places in California or, depending on where you are, that are zoned for 30 days or more. Like, you have to, no less, that's 30-day stays. So if the maximum, I would say it's probably 30 days, but for us, we run under 30 days. So we can have as many turnovers. We can have between 4 to like 8 turnovers on average, if I'm thinking.
Okay, in a month.
In a month.
All right, so between 4 and 8. So let's say that's 6. Let's even say it's 4. So that means on an average of once a week, you're gonna have to start doing something, anything, like any kind of action. You're gonna have to consistently be getting this unit ready, making sure nothing's broken. You're gonna have to send your cleaners, send whoever to fix whatever it may be regularly. When you have a long-term tenant, and especially a good long-term tenant, like they move in, they live in their apartment, and you just get to sit there and collect your money. You know what I mean? And so this is why it's really important on how you choose your tenants, the screening, the background check, and everything like that, employment verification, because once you get a good tenant in there, you really don't want them to leave that soon. And ideally, they're going to be there for the length of whatever the lease term is, usually 12 months, sometimes 6 months, depending on where you are, depending on how you run your property. But my point is, if you do enough upfront work and good enough upfront work to get a good tenant in there, for the most part, you can move a tenant in and not have to worry about that tenant necessarily. You're actually more worried about the property, like maybe something could just go wrong, a pipe could burst or whatever it may be, but still, that's just how business is.
Okay.
But the tenant itself, like, get a good tenant, tell them, run me my money, and you just sit and you call it a day. Like, I'm not with all this back and forth and like running back, oh, like, is this a good tenant? Is this not tenant, a guest? Is this a good guest? Is this a good guest? Oh, it was a good guest, but now he's gone in 3 days. Got to go find another good guest. So, I don't know if I'm with that.
Okay, so and here's the thing. We have so much more control. We have so much more control in regards to the quality of our guest. You know what I mean? Compared to the quality of a tenant. Because look, you can run your background checks. You can run their credit checks.
Right.
And the thing is, that doesn't guarantee that tenant is going to be a good tenant.
Most definitely.
On paper, they could look amazing. But the second that they get in there and they start occupying that property, they could be horrible. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that's every, as you said, in most scenarios, people walk into a situation in where it's a regular tenant.
Okay.
They're taking care of the property and, they're doing things the right way. But, there's also scenarios in which they're not. And if this is your first investment, having control of the quality of your guests, in our case in short-term rentals, is a huge factor, especially when it comes to protecting your investment. But we'll get into that into our second argument.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. Like, I really do hear you. But, like, also, again, like, as far as long-term rentals, I think that goes back to, like, the upfront work. So, for instance, like, any property that I'm a real estate pro, so I'm a deal finder of multifamily real estate. So, any property that I've found for a client, we have a good idea, I mean, a semi-good idea at least of what to expect from the current tenants if they're going to be remaining after the close of sale. So it's like, I believe that if you're doing enough up front to make sure you know what's going on, you can inherit tenants and be okay with it. Or you can inherit tenants that aren't good tenants, but at least you knew ahead of time. So you know what you're getting into, and maybe you're going to think of, let me negotiate a cash for keys, or maybe they're backed up on rent and I tell them they can move out and I won't evict them. You know, like, you do have certain control, you do have certain options. And if you're good enough at speaking with them, or, you know, just even just conversing, or maybe hire somebody to come do it on your behalf, to let them know of their options, let them know what may happen if they were to proceed in the manner that they were, then you have an opportunity there to see what works best for you and that tenant moving forward, is my only point.
Okay.
Well, is one of my
Okay. Fair enough. Well, I think that we're going to let you guys decide on that. We're going to go ahead and roll over to our next topic within this. Are short-term rentals a better investment than long-term rentals? We're going to rock into our second subject into that, which is the wear and tear. All right. So to begin the wear and tear, that's what I'm going to say. So we had a situation, and this is as a short-term rental host. You know what I'm saying? This is as a short-term rental host. We walked into a situation where we let them stay for a couple of months at a time, right? And it was, actually, I told you this story before. So it was this guy, it was his, I thought it was his wife, and their like little baby.
Oh.
And they walked in to our, you know, we looking, I was actually with the person who kind of showed them around. You don't have to do that, but I just, you know, it was they're actually our first guest. You know, they walked in and, you know, they're living there for a couple of days. And all of a sudden I see the guy outside of the apartment, and he's just going crazy. He's going irate. He's upset, right? We can't see inside of the apartment. We don't have any, you know, equipment inside of the apartment to monitor, but he was outside, in which we have doorbell cameras to kind of catch. He's going irate, and then you see him take off, and then a couple hours later, you see this chick, you know, with her child and another guy, and they're all, you know, occupying the unit now. So we're looking around, me and my partner, we start messaging each other like, what is this situation? So prior to him leaving, he messes up our apartment. He's knocking stuff over. He's breaking things. He's pretty much breaking down our apartment, and he's going to try to blame it on the person, on his girlfriend or whoever she was.
That's wild.
Right. So the thing is, like, and that kind of brings me over to, let me switch it over. Like, if this happens and with a long-term tenant, first of all, you're probably not going to know, because you don't have that type of security to monitor things like that. And if there is immense damage going on to the property or happening to the property, once again, you're not going to be aware of it until, you know, the day that they have to move out. And when you move out, you walk in and you're like, this is a disaster. Now, smart investors who operate long-term, they should have a fund, you know, created to handle any wear and tear, but sometimes that fund isn't enough to cover all the damages. You know what I'm saying? So in regards to wear and tear, I feel like short-term rentals have the advantage because we can closely monitor the damages to our unit, or we can protect our investment, because right after their stay, no matter how long their stay is, we're in there to go ahead and get ready to turn it over for our next guest. And before, you know, we turn it over, we're looking for any damaged property. We're looking for ways that they damaged our investment, because we can then ask for reimbursement. So one, short-term rentals, if you're a good short-term rental host, you know, you have short-term rental insurance. If the guest damaged stuff, you can go ahead and submit a claim. On top of that, you have Airbnb. If you're short-term renting your listings on Airbnb, you have air cover, which is another layer of protection. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's $1 million of air cover. Actually, in that situation, I had to use air cover because they messed up everything. We went and we bought our stuff again. We submitted a claim to air cover. They reimbursed us within a few days. So, I mean, when it comes to wear and tear, the control aspect of that, I feel, is huge. And, you know, I feel like short-term rentals is superior in that form.
Man, it's crazy. Like, I wish I thought about this earlier, but not to revert too much to the last topic, but it does kind of tie into this one too. I don't know if you heard about what happened over the weekend in Beverly Hills.
What happened?
There was a shooting. Like, I know a couple of people died, a few more like injured, and it was a very prominent like area. Obviously, Beverly Hills, like if you know LA, you know Beverly Hills is a high income, high net worth location for the most part. Short-term rental in Beverly Hills. They had a party, one which was illegal, and then whatever happened, like one thing led to another. There was a shooting, people died. So it's like straight up, my man's keep talking about control, and like the camera you can see and this and that, but it's like, what does the host do at that point? It's like, oh well, someone died. Like, you guys gotta go. I mean, you know what I mean? So it's like, but then that goes back to the wear and tear. Like, if there's shooting and a party, like only God knows what kind of wear and tear even took place in that unit. You know what I mean? So it is a cool thing that Air Cover, you said it's Air Cover?
Air Cover, yeah.
That Air Cover is going to reimburse you. But then it's like, how long is the unit down while you're getting all those repairs made? Because you're losing money right there. So for long-term renters, or for long-term property owners who rent to long-term guests, I guess I should say, when someone puts in their notice or inquires that they're moving out, you actually do have an option to schedule what's called a pre-move-out inspection. And during this pre-move-out inspection, you get to see like, okay, how does the unit look? Especially depending if you don't go in the unit often. Some people, they're very hands-off, so they don't know what's going on in that property at all. Some other property management I've seen where like they may go in for one reason or another every couple of months, or, you know, just to do some kind of city inspection, whatever it may be. But anyway, so during this pre-move out inspection, you start to get a good idea of what you're going to need. Like, okay, we're going to need to repaint the whole unit. That costs this much. We're going to need a new dishwasher. That costs this much, you know? So you can also, at that time, you would have a moment of time to let the tenant know that they're going to be charged for certain things, but then also you can get yourself prepared to start getting stuff in order, and you may have to use their security deposit, which is the point of a security deposit, you know, like to cover the damages left by you after you moved out. So my point is, like, there's still more control. It may not be as much as like, oh, like every tenant that comes in, or like twice a week you see the condition of the property, but then like that goes on to like, how much do I want to do that on a regular basis? Like, you know, like I do want a hands-off approach, and like he said, like a good investor is going to make sure they're putting aside money every month. So it's like when you get paid rent, it's not just like you get paid rent and it goes to your pocket. First, if you have a mortgage, you're definitely paying the mortgage first, you know, PITI, payment, insurance, taxes, you know what I'm saying? So you got to pay for all that. You do put aside for CapEx, which is capital expenditures, which means like anything that goes wrong to the property. But then there's also like other small reserves you're putting to the side too. This is to help keep you safe and protected for if there are unexpected expenses. So if that comes up often, just in business in general, not even just in real estate, just running business, there's going to be things you have to pay for that you didn't expect. So a good investor gets prepared for those things, and you still do as much as you can to alleviate the stress and pressure from those things. Not to say that that means it goes away completely, but it does help a lot, you know, especially if you have a growth mindset and you're looking towards the big picture. You can't let any small thing just rock your boat all the time.
So I want to respond to the story that you told.
It's not a story. It happened. It really happened. You remember Space Jam? It wasn't a dream. It really happened. That's how I feel. It wasn't a story. This happened over the weekend. I'll pull it up for you.
You're gonna pull it up? I believe it. I believe it.
No, we need to know the details.
Okay.
But go ahead while I pull up the details of this event.
What I'll say in rebuttal to that is, if depending on how you're running your short-term rental business, if you do not want parties, there's ways that you can make sure parties are not thrown. A couple of ways that we make sure is, we have a noise decibel monitor within our unit. We also have the doorbell cameras that show anybody coming in and out of our unit. We can also monitor how many times the door is opened and closed, just to see if there's anybody coming in and out of the unit at the same time. And with those different security checks, we then can have a good understanding of who is there, who's not supposed to be there. And we can then alert our guests and letting them know, like, hey, too many people are here. And you stated that this many people were coming, and there's way more people than stated. It's either they all need to take off, or we're going to cancel your reservation and ask you to leave. Once again, it's all about control. We have that control because they're guests. And if we want, I've had to do it before, we have to escort people from the unit. We have to escort people and let them know, like, okay, you need to leave, or we're going to have a police escort. And we've actually had to call police and escort people out, which was fine because we kept that payment. On top of that, we also opened those days up to get even more cash for new people to come in and, occupy that stay.
But I have a question.
Okay.
So how often are you yourself checking for how many people are coming into the unit?
So,
or how frequent, I should.
I don't have to check that often. It's when you have, on an average stay, you can kind of monitor when somebody's leaving the property and coming in. And if it's a normal amount of alerts, then you're not really too worried about, the actions going on in that property. It's when you start to get multiple alerts. When you start to get multiple alerts of, doors being open, lights are going off, and then the decibel monitor system is at a higher threshold than that of which it should be. Then that's when you get suspicious, and then you look into it. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
So that's not something that you have to do all the time, but when you feel like people are trying to take advantage of your house rules, then, you go ahead and you can either do it yourself, or if you're big enough to have your security team look into it. And if they're breaking those house rules, you can go ahead and let them know.
All right. I feel that. I found the article. Because it's not, it all ties in.
Okay.
It really does.
All right.
So at least 3 people killed, 4 others wounded in the shooting early Saturday morning. The thing is, it was at a short-term rental at around 2:30 a.m. So if you get an alert at 2:30, you waking up?
Yeah.
But do you want to?
No.
That's point number 1.
Okay.
Point number 1. And then what if you don't wake up because of the alert?
Okay.
Then the party will go on.
As
it did in Beverly Hills.
So as a long-term
Saturday morning.
As a long-term property owner, do you even know that there's a party being thrown? Do you even know that there's a shooting? All these things can go down. No, wait a second.
Better question.
Wait a second.
Better question.
Can I finish?
No, better question. Do you even care? You don't.
You don't?
No, if there's a party, no, I don't care if someone's having a party in the space that they rent to live at. Okay. I know it's way different for a short-term rental because of certain implications and things going on. And then, beside the point, this is in Beverly Hills. How do you think the neighbors feel? Right. So I know these neighbors are heated. Right. And the host, he could be like, oh, it's in my contract, no parties, no parties. They don't care about that. And these affluent neighbors, that's the only detail I'm going to give you. Affluent neighbors, okay. You know how they could be when they feel like you're disrupting their life. Okay. So that's only going to make it even worse for you in your short-term rental investment.
Okay. So if you're having a party, if you're a long-term tenant and you're having a party and there's a shooting, all of these things apply, but you have no control. You probably don't even know because you don't have security systems going off. There's probably, and say there is a shooting and there's damages to your property now. At least we can know ahead of time. We can, after those stay, we can go ahead and find out what damages have happened and we can charge them ahead of time. During that stay, you have no idea what type of damages are going down on your property. You have no idea what's broken. You have no idea who got shot, whose blood spurts all over your carpet and on your walls. True. You know what I mean? Like and the thing is, parties can happen in affluent neighborhoods. Dude, watching the movie, what was it? What's that movie called? Project X. You have a Project X party. They had one. It looked like somebody's parents could not be home. They can't even own the property. And those neighbors could still come out and have those type of issues with that party being thrown. So that kind of goes within the territory of having rental property in general.
Okay, I get that. That's true. And it's true because I do like that point because like if you own rental property, whether short-term, long-term, arbitrage, or you actually purchase the property, there's always going to be like, highs and lows, give and goes. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's never all going to be rosy. So I can respect that. I really do.
Okay.
But, and it's a big but, you just made me lose my thought. So the but is that in the short-term rentals, it goes back to you really don't know. So just as much as it seems like we don't know who we're renting to in a long-term rental, I feel even more so in a short-term rental. So let's say, for instance, I rent out an apartment and this guy, let's say he's, I don't know, 35 years old and he's making $150,000 a year and he's got a good job at a place that expects you to stay in line. You know what I mean? Like, those high profile jobs.
Right.
I know these things about that guy. So because I know these things, statistics tell me that I can deduce that he would be a good prospect to rent to.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like on the short-term rental side, you don't do as much of a deep dive into the character of that guest.
Okay. So to rebuttal that, not only can, as short-term rental hosts, you have the option to do the exact same checks as long-term renters do. You have the option if that's how you want to rent.
So you do employment checks?
I don't have to do an employment check. As long as you're paying, because as long as you're giving us the payment ahead of time, we don't have to do an employment check.
You know what I mean? That makes sense.
So we do checks that you can do a background check. You can do a financial check, a financial criminals background check. There's different checks that you can do. On top of that, which is my favorite, if you're a short-term rental host and you're using, the platforms like Airbnb and VRBO, one of the most important checks that we do is looking at their past reviews from other hosts. If I look at from other hosts, I can make an informed decision So I can make an informed decision looking at their past performance from other hosts. And if they're like, oh no, they messed up the property, this place is nasty, it's disgusting, I can right there, without any ramifications from these platforms, deny their ability to stay at our location. But if I see that their reviews are great, they're like 4.5 star, 5-star, 4-star reviews, we can go ahead and allow them to stay.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, because we do something similar in long-term renting where you do call the previous landlord or previous owner. There are ways around it. People can lie, but once you're in the game long enough, you do kind of get a good idea of how to make sure that you're talking to somebody who actually knows.
Yeah.
I was in property management for like 6+ years before I transitioned to real estate. So, I've learned a lot of tricks of the trade, as they call it. Yeah, I learned a lot of tricks of the trade, but like just that 6 years, there's people who know way more than me because they worked in different kind of properties or they did longer than I did. So it's like, as time goes on, you do get better at being able to vet and really check what kind of tenant this is. But again, like, it still goes back to, there's never anything for sure in business, but still, like, I just feel like getting a good overall picture of who this tenant is will help you make a better decision in the long run.
Yeah. What I'll say is, in regards, first off, vote in the comments. Let us know who you think won this debate.
And when you choose that I won the debate, just let Joey down easy, okay? Because it's hard to, like, take this kind of loss about your baby short-term rental.
So when you already lost the debate, you have to then try to convince the audience?
That's what we do. Okay. I see you. All right,
so go ahead and take a vote. Take a vote in our comments. Let us know who you think won the debate. One thing we like to do at the end of our shows, we like to talk about, things that you need to be in order to be a good investor, right? So I'll go ahead and add my first B right now. And I think the first B that anybody should be is be curious. You need to be curious to kind of understand, what's going on. If you don't have a curiosity to understand what's going on in the investment market, you'll never know. You could say you want to be an investor. You could say you want to take action, but if you're not curious enough to go ahead and look into that knowledge, you'll never go ahead and take that first step. So Make sure we be curious. And last, be you. All right.